So, my name is Jennifer Wright, and I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the ACPE board, and we're here for a Schoology session, so if that's the session you need to be in or want to be in, that's where you're here. We have Brenda here from Olympia School District, and we have Kelly here from Schoology, and they'll be talking about their partnership and the product. In a couple minutes, we're going to pass around a sign-up sheet. You can sign it if you want to. It's for Schoology's purposes, so just know that's what you're signing for. So, I'm going to hand over the mic, and you guys are all ready to go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Hi, my name is Kelly Adey. I'm the Director of Instructional Strategy for Schoology currently. I pseudo-retired from a district in Colorado for 25 years, so I was with the Cherry Creek School District in the Denver metro area. So I joined Schoology in 2016, and part of what I did as the Director of Technology in Cherry Creek was roll out our Chromebook initiative, support Google Apps for Education, and also switch LMSs from Moodle to Schoology after we'd switched from Blackboard to Moodle. Plus there was a first class to Outlook issue that happened as well that I'm still blocking out from trauma. So anyway, so I now work with Schoology. I want to also introduce Andrew Amala. He's in the back of the room. He's our regional sales director for this area. So we're going to talk a little bit about professional learning inside of Schoology. Brenda's going to really run the show here, but just for those of you that don't know much about Schoology, we have a couple of quick things. We do have all of our resources actually hosted inside of a site. I couldn't find any place to post a link or anything, so we just have a Schoology course that we made open for anybody. So if you want to just snap a picture of that, you're welcome to. All the resources are posted there. There's also a Google form just to find out kind of who is in the room and what kind of background you have. So, and with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So we are the leading K-12 management solution for learning. We have obviously a lot of districts around the nation. We also have some in international. The country of Uruguay uses Schoology. So we also have folks all over the world, but mostly we're in the K-12 space. And Andrew could probably talk more about that. But we have 23 million users out there. We have a lot of people that are using this for grades, for PD, for curriculum hosting, lots of other solutions that are out there for not just courses, but really kind of bringing the district together. And one of the things that we're really have spent a lot of time focused on is uptime. We had 99.9% uptime in the fall, and those of you that have ever been in a director or leadership position for technology knows that that's super important, because if that goes down, learning goes down. We have actually an app that's available for Android and iOS, and it's very close in terms of functionality with the web version of Schoology. If you want to check it out, you're welcome to do so. There is a basic version of Schoology that anybody can sign up to use, and there's the enterprise that has more bells and whistles that are designed more for districts that roll it out at kind of a domain level. But the whole idea is bringing everything together, from curriculum content to communities like parents and other people that support kids, along with tools. So we have Open LTI, we have an Open API, so we try to integrate as many external tools as possible. And we have a very tight integration with both Google Apps for Education and Office 365. We spend a lot of time developing those because we know those are major productivity suites. But at the bottom of it all is really the student-centered learning framework. I don't know if any of you have seen the Plan, Do, Study, Act model from way back it started in the 50s actually, as the cycle of continuous improvement. But that's kind of how we think about learning inside of Schoology, and it's really centered around 4 basic questions. If you're from a district that uses PLCs, you'll recognize these right away. But initially thinking about planning, what do you want students to know, understand, and be able to do? And then how do we use content, pedagogy, and technology to engage all learners? How do we know students are learning, and then how do we respond to those needs? So when you think about what a learning management should provide as a system, it should be something that helps you address all of these different areas of that learning cycle. And that's something that we'll talk about today, not necessarily with students necessarily, but teachers, because we're talking about professional learning, but really it's a learner-centered framework. This is some research from Holland Horde. I work with districts that are just coming on board, so I'm hoping to work with Snoqualmie Valley very soon. But we basically approach implementation based on the research of Holland Horde for what is really impactful for student learning. And we're obviously going to be focusing today on strategy 3, which is investing in professional learning. So we have training that comes along with the package of course, but we also are very invested in trying to figure out what your district's doing for professional learning and seeing how Schoology fits into that in the mix. Because the more you have people learning inside the platform we want them to use with kids, the better they kind of feel acclimated to using that with students. When they're in as learners, that really helps them figure out what they can do then in the classroom. So when we're talking about professional learning opportunities, this comes from Goochland County Schools. The way they recommended designing was providing a roadmap for that learning experience, and some of this Brenda will talk about for her own district. But encouraging learners to extend that exploration to the web, offering multiple modes of information delivery, and then modeling. That's probably the most important one that's on there, is modeling good instruction. So one of the things that we want to think about when we think about professional learning is it really should mimic whatever you want students to be, or teachers to be doing with students in the classroom. And part of that involves not just digital learning, but choice. So we talk about voice and choice for students a lot. We should have that available for learners as well that are adults, because that's something that I think makes it much more relevant for them. And I think that part of what we've seen, at least on the Schoology side, is when you see districts that use Schoology professional learning, the adoption level in terms of depth and that SAMR model is accelerated. People get out of that substitution mode much more quickly if they have an opportunity to see those other levels of engagement, because then that kind of spills over into the classroom. And then also using PD for continuous improvement. One of the most powerful things that we've seen is people utilizing Schoology for PLCs. So there's something inside of Schoology that actually kind of makes it unique. It's a groups area. So every LMS has a place for courses. Schoology has a dedicated space for collaboration, and it's called groups. And that's where you see most of your curriculum building happening, your PLCs. You'll see our district leadership team in Cherry Creek use Schoology, parent communities using it. So if you do have PLCs and you're using that model inside your district, one of the important things is being able to have a place for collective activity and collaborative growth. And that's something that I think has really helped Schoology kind of leap above what else is out there, because it does encourage that collaboration at the teacher level. And with that, I'll introduce Brenda Ransom.
Okay. So my name is Brenda Ransom, and this is where you stay if you, oh, thank you, Kelly. This is where you get to stay if you don't register early for the conference. So this is a picture I took this morning of where I am staying during the ACPE conference this year. It's at the trailer park down the road a ways, a little bit that way. It's a tiny house at the Mount Hood River Village RV Resort, and I would not use the word resort lightly here.
At $299 a night, right?
No, I think it was about $138, but it was supposed to be an adventure, and it is. So these are my numbers a little bit here. I am one of 3 instructional technology specialists for the Olympia School District. This is my 34th year in education. What was that 3? Oh, it's my 3rd year in the Olympia School District, and it is my 3rd school district that I've worked in. I have 22 years of experience in providing technology professional development to teachers across the state and the country in some situations, and 10 years of experience as an instructional technology facilitator, coordinator, specialist, coach, and every other name that you could call someone who works with teachers. And so that is the area that I'm coming from, is that a professional development focus. My 2 daughters, and the main focus of our family is our little dog there. So that's a little about me. Our district is a medium-sized district, I'd say, of about 10,000 students. We have 650 teachers, 19 schools, unique in that most of our elementary schools are very, very small. Middle schools, anywhere from, Scott, give me numbers, but
350 to 800.
350?
Yep.
Yeah, 350 to 800 students all over the place, and then 2 comprehensive high schools, an alternative high school, and then we have a regional learning academy that houses our Home Connect program and our students that come in from homeschool programs, H Connect, I Connect. A strange little school of its own, nothing like I've ever seen before. We are a Google Suite for Education school district, and we just passed in February a $35.487 million technology levy, and we have a new superintendent this year as well. So that's a little background on us. But 2 years ago, when we were looking forward to a one-to-one Chromebook initiative, because that was our plan moving forward, we were looking at ways that we were going to be able to manage and share and organize electronic materials, and not just inside the classroom space, but also for professional development and for curriculum materials for the district. We wanted something that was designed specifically for K-12, and a lot of the products that we were looking at were designed for higher ed, and we said, well, what's going to look like in our elementary classrooms where we want everyone involved and to feel included? We wanted a product that integrated with Skyward really well, and we wanted to have a strong Google integration, and we knew that was there, but it was also on the roadmap to be improved, which it has been. And then we wanted to look at what were the professional development options, not that they were providing for us, but then we could use the platform to provide professional development for teachers. And so we took a hard look at a lot of things, and we chose to pilot Schoology with what we call our Digital Immersion Initiative, and that it's grown, but in the 2016-2017 school year, it was 3 schools, an elementary, a middle, and a high school, volunteered, they were voluntold to get sizes larger at the high school level, and we had cohort groups, cross-curricular at the middle school and high school, and grade level groups, cohort groups at the elementary. And we were focusing on blended learning and instructional strategies in a one-to-one classroom. We gave every teacher a cart of Chromebooks. Even though Chromebooks were already in their building, they weren't dedicated to a classroom space, so we made sure that they were dedicated to classroom spaces. We spent time providing professional development to them, but that professional development, again, was around instructional strategies, time for classroom implementation of those strategies, time to come together in those cohort groups at their schools and across schools to share and talk about what was really working and what wasn't working, both in the one-to-one part of things with the learning management system, with all the logistics of a one-to-one. And then our goal was to build leadership at that school level so that we could continue to increase the number of devices in the building and have some folks there who are ready to take that ball and keep it rolling. This year, we're in our first year of district-wide Schoology implementation. And to get ready for that, last spring, we brought together lead teams from every school in the district, and we gave them a lot of information, introductions to Schoology. Schoology was kind enough to allow us to make sure that everyone had accounts before our first year of implementation, so we were able to open it up to everyone, get them in the platform at least, those who wanted to, and say, this is what you can do. You all have accounts. Here's what's coming. You can play over the summer. We'll train you. So we did 2-hour introduction to Schoology courses at the building level. And then we had lead teams who took a deeper level of training in the spring. For the school year, we made sure we started up the year with introduction to Schoology classes at the middle and high school level. Our elementaries are coming on board in smaller groups right now. But we're focusing at the middle and high school level. And we did multiples at the building sites so that they knew it wasn't just something that was out there for them to come to. We were in the buildings, focused on individual schools. Then we said, once you know what you can do, we're going to make sure that you can get your Skyward and Schoology integration just right. Because that ability to integrate their gradebook in Schoology with their gradebook in Skyward and have that one push. We're doing manual gradebook syncing, so the teacher decides when they want to sync their gradebook. To get that set up is critical, because if that doesn't work for them, things aren't great. So we made sure that we spent a lot of time with folks. We were on hand, on site, making sure that their Schoology and Skyward integration settings for everything they needed to do was well set up. And then we ran a Schoology Essentials series, which was a blended and a face-to-face all at the same time model. And then, again, all along, we have a second group of cohorts from each of those schools and new schools that are coming on board where we're doing the same thing with them. We're bringing them on through cohort model professional development. So in Schoology right now, our goal is to provide a variety of types of PD. We have face-to-face, where we just put the materials. We still teach classes face-to-face, but that's where they go to get the materials, the handouts, the agenda. Everything's hosted in Schoology. We have some of our online professional development, which typically our Google Certified Educator that we do is completely online, but we're housing the process, the paperwork, how you get your clock hours, and all of the things, the steps to do to document that. That's in Schoology, even though it's not about Schoology. We are working with accessibility because we were one of the districts that were, I wouldn't say served. We were provided with some opportunities to become more accessible through the Office of Civil Rights. So we have like the introduction to Grackle Docs. So we're making sure that we have some tools in there that people can come to class, or they can choose to find the materials there and do an online learning experience for themselves. Then the Digital Immersion Initiative, really, that's our one-to-one training, and that's where I want to focus, because when Kelly was talking about having learners in the platform, or having teachers in the platform as learners being the valuable part of professional development and where you get the growth, that's what we were trying to focus on. And so I'm going to go ahead and just talk about the innovation that we saw happen through some of the strategies that we simply modeled when we were providing professional development to these cohort groups. And that's where I find the power. The first example that I want to share with you was we had introduced the SAMR model to these teachers, and we were talking about taking a deeper look at the SAMR model and taking a lesson that teachers had already taught or were about to teach, because we have a lot of new curriculum, and looking at the lesson design and thinking about integration of technology in that lesson, and then looking at some ways to move it toward the modification or redefinition level of SAMR. So they were redesigning a lesson. That was their project, and there was a whole lot of teaching and learning around that. But what it ended up looking like, I'm going to sit for a moment. This was our online course. It hosted, again, it's face-to-face. It was blended, and some of it was purely online. This was their lesson redesign module. So it looks this simple. One of our goals was to say, yes, the content is that you're redesigning a lesson with the SAMR model in mind to better serve the needs of your students, but how do you open an assignment? How do you read through the directions of an assignment, understand how it appears on your calendar? How do you submit an assignment? How do you take feedback from an instructor, implement that feedback into your assignment, and resubmit if you need to? So we're taking them through that process as a learner of what that feels like, because they've never been a student in this system unless they're a student in a course. So we took them through that whole thing. That doesn't sound all that complex, but there was a lot of learning going on for them when they did that. They got grades. Their grades went in a grade book. We could show them what that looked like. But what happened from that, what was exciting to me is that they said, okay, now I've done that. I understand the process of submitting an assignment, what that would feel like and look like for a student. There are 3 different ways to do it. I get all that. Then they went from that to, okay, I kind of like these online grading tools. I like the idea of being able to, in my own class, do online grading and then sync my gradebook to Skyward without doing double entry. They went from that to saying, there's an integrated calendar in Schoology. If other people are using Schoology, all of the kids' calendars are integrated, and I can do something really cool, like take a look from within my class. This is one of our teachers who's doing a flipped classroom model, and she said, this is critical to me. I am using the Schoology sidebar menu for my course, right here for her course, and there's a little button called Workload Planning, and this tells her how many assignments individual students have due on any particular day. So she can say, oh my gosh, certain kids of mine have some heavy days ahead. If I'm going to put a final out, or I'm going to put a big assignment due date out, I may want to avoid Friday, May 4th. These kids are getting a lot. And they could even click into that and see what teachers have assigned that work, what the work is, so that they can start to plan for students and make choices themselves that are good for students. that workload planning tool is not, it's not used enough. It's underutilized, but you need to have teachers be aware of it. But teachers started to look through things and say, oh my gosh, once you have assignments on the calendar, you have other tools you can use. So it just kind of blossomed. That from that one skill of I can submit an assignment and get a score, take feedback, and move on. And that all started from content, and the content was the redesign of a lesson through the SAMR model. Another example that I want to make sure, okay, so the next example, we wanted to talk about the shifting roles of teachers and students when you have a one-to-one classroom. Everything's not the same. It's not teacher-led. It can be very student-centered. What does that look like? How does your role change? And so we had a module. It was online or flexible. They could meet with us or they could do it all online. And they were supposed to be taking a look at an infographic and then doing what we asked them to do, finding themselves in there, finding what really fit about them. So they were saying, okay, in this, what really speaks to me right now? I'm uncomfortable. This is not a great role for me as a teacher. So they were going to join into a discussion. So we decided that this discussion would be an online discussion, which makes sense in an online class, but that we would push into that online discussion audio-visual tools because we wanted them to know about the AV tools in Schoology. So we took risks. This is my colleague Sharon. And we all said, we'll start the discussion with the audio-visual tools. And there's Sharon reflecting. And then we're asking them to comment back.
In the profile of a modern teacher, the thing that really resonates with me right now is the idea that you do not have to be an expert before you can try something out. Right now, I'm just barely able to see over the edge. I'm just barely tall enough to reach the counter of this Schoology audio-video tool, and so I'm trying it out, and it's kind of fun.
So part of the directions where they had to create an audio-video part of the discussion and then respond to other people's in different ways. And so we jumped in, but they were hysterical, which was the funny part, but they were also real. And then they took this to different levels. So that's the innovative part. So how does this lead into something bigger? I got to remember, because this just went crazy. From this, everyone started having online audio-video discussions. What was really nice was they were doing it in math, about how to solve problems. They were doing it in literature, in their lit circles. They were doing Socratic seminars where the inner circle was talking. The outer circle usually is silent. So the outer circle was having an online discussion in Schoology while the inner circle was participating verbally. And then it turned into one of the coolest things. I'm a crier, so I'm going to just jump into it here. Right now they're in the process of planning their independent study project for this year, and they're aligning their goal to the ISTE standards and talking about the skills and strategies that they're learning. But you can't read the explanation for this, but it's Alex Parker, one of our Spanish teachers, who's working with our ELL teachers. And his Spanish 3-4 students are going to be watching videos of the native Spanish speakers, and I think I can get to it here somewhere. I threw it into here also. This is a sample. This is the template that he's created. They're not finished yet. They're doing this lesson at the end of this week or early next week. So that's the plan. And the idea is that, if I read it from his, it was going to sound a lot better. He said, students will use digital tools to connect with learners from a variety of backgrounds and cultures, engaging with them in ways that broaden mutual understanding and learning. So he's collaborating with the ELL teacher and another Spanish teacher, so there's a 3-way collaboration. Jill's ELL students are creating a series of short videos related to cultural topics from their home countries, specifically Spanish-speaking countries to start with, and then creating Schoology they were going to do it in a group, but they've decided to do it another way now because that didn't work out the best. Her students are going to be, Jill's students, the ELL teacher students, are going to be posting the videos, and they've decided to do it in a course, not a discussion, and then the students are going to watch the videos and answer comprehension questions. But the example that I'm going to show you are kids that I've seen, and this is both of these teachers' second year using Schoology. They're both part of our digital Immersion Initiative. And this is the video that two very shy Spanish-speaking students created. I know the assignment is not fully in there yet, but they're getting ready. No, I just want to view it. They're getting ready to show this to the Spanish 3-4 class, and they're talking about formal and informal uses of vocabulary.
Hola, me llamo Eni y soy de Guatemala. Yo me llamo María y soy de Venezuela. Hoy vamos a hablar acerca de tú versus usted, que es una diferencia muy grande. El tú lo usamos para conversaciones con amigos o cuando estás con tu familia, que es un poco más informal y lo usamos más que todo para cuando la conexión con otra persona.
So what's exciting to me, why I would cry, is because these girls could not get up in front of that Spanish class and talk about this necessarily, but they're using the teacher's computer. The teachers created a lesson, created an assignment, and they're actually using the teacher computer while the teacher's there and recording the video through the lesson material, through the assignment creation tools where you can the teacher can record audio, video. They're just doing it on the teacher computer, and that is true collaboration, and that is using a student-centered. That is student-centered as it gets, basically. So the next one I wanted to share was just an example of how we were talking about digital citizenship, which is a topic we always talk about, and we had shared an infographic about digital citizenship with the students in our DII, the teacher learners, and they were asked to create an infographic and share it in a Schoology media album so that everyone could see it, and not into an assignment where only the teacher can see it. So they can share it in the assignment, but then also create a media album. That morphed into lots of media albums to introduce concepts to students, or media albums about field trips they went on. But right now, we have our French 3-4 students getting ready and doing right now, and I'll show you an example. Instead of just a media album full of pictures that the teacher adds or a student adds, it's morphed into student voice, student choice, where the students, advanced French 3 and 4 students, are studying French Impressionist art and artists and learning advanced art vocabulary, and then creating a presentation of their choice about the artist and the artist's work. And then they're sharing those through a media album so that everyone has access, which is different than when you share just to your teacher in an assignment. And so that looks like, where did it go? I probably opened something over the top of it, so we'll just go back to courses. And that looks like they're doing it, they're in 2 different classes, so the teacher created a class. Instead of using one of the Skyward classes, she created this place so they could put them together. I do not want to translate the page. And I know this is a good one because I've been watching them grow. And then the students have a chance to explain them and comment.
Il est né en Zundert, Netherlands. Zundert était une assez petite ville qui était assez pauvre, donc Van Gogh appartenait à la classe moyenne. Quand il était petit, Van Gogh il aidait avec le jardin et d'autres choses à l'extérieur de sa maison. Vincent avait le même nom que son frère.
So I believe that student is drawing that. So today this was uploaded at 1:03, and they're adding their comments in French. Then students will add their comments, and they'll be able to share all these together. So the beauty isn't just what the teachers are learning to do, but what they're able to do and how they're allowing students to then innovate and do all sorts of things within the platform that they probably wouldn't have done if we hadn't sparked them originally with having to do something as a learner. Because you don't just explore these tools, there's too many of them, unless you have something intentional that you ask these teachers to do within Schoology as a learner. So, next, when we talked about professional learning communities, what cracks me up about what I'm going to show you is we've been using Schoology for professional learning communities for 2 years now. This is my favorite professional learning community. This is a group. It is into groups, all groups, district groups. I would go to the school and I would see this is one of the groups. They started out doing one of the most powerful things ever. And it looks like there's nothing happening. But they meet in their PLC groups regularly. And the thing that they needed, because they're using OER resources for their math curriculum, was they needed common assessments. And they decided, if we're going to build them from scratch, where should we build them? Well, let's build them in Schoology. And so all they're doing is using the resources area to build common assessments. And this is 2 years of work of building and refining common assessments for the different modules of the OER that they're using for math. And it doesn't look like anything, but if you look inside, it's hours and hours and hours of collaborative work that's done in a group, and then they decide what they're going to do. They split up the work, they go off, and they contribute in this collaborative space, this group. So even though it doesn't look like anything, when you get to the page, they don't talk here, they don't collaborate and discuss online, they do that in person. They build their resources there, and once the resources are there, this little this little icon right here, if we had built this as a group, I want it in my course, I add it to my course from these resources that are commonly held. So that is so powerful. I love that example. The high school science group is led by one of our most amazing teachers. There are 9 folks here at this high school, 9 members, and they just organize their resources so carefully. They're color-coded, they are organized. You go inside here, and there's only one IB chemistry course, so that's not very fair. If we just take a look at biology, they're just organizing their resources, they're saying what's there, and they're just contributing. And then these can be copied by anyone in the group to any course that they want, or into anyone's personal resources, which is another section of Schoology, the resources section. So you've got your home page. We've talked about, the courses that you can create, obviously, the groups where you can collaborate, and the resources where you can store things and refine things and gather things and collect and curate. So our teachers are doing amazing things. The OSD self-help group, we just ripped this idea off from the Puyallup School District where I came from. They were doing it, and I said, oh, we need to do that too. They talked to us about it. They have questions all the time that we can't answer, and sometimes the teachers who are teaching know the answers before people like me who haven't done it before know the answer and have to look it up or call someone, and so they help each other. So this was Mademoiselle Kinsell, who was doing the French 3-4 project. She said, talk to me about file size and media albums. My students are finishing these projects and they don't upload. And somebody chimes right in. Hey, you've got to, if MP4s work the best for me. Somebody else says, an example of Kate says, notification questions, I entered this. And lots of people get there first. Alex and then Kate are having a conversation, then another teacher and Kate, and then 3 days later I get there. So it's about them helping each other in this space where there's a group and people who are interested in being a part of that conversation go to this group to get help. And then even if you hadn't had the problem before, the answer is there later, or you remember to go back and consult. I often get answers here myself. So we have that kind of thing, and then we have the great professional development where just people like you and I who are part of a group. So the groups that I've joined are groups that I've created, groups that are created within our group, and then the Schoology groups, like the Schoology Educator Group, that comes right into my feed every day. There's usually something in there that relates to something that I'm doing in professional development or with the teachers in our district. And these people ask questions, and the community that's in that group answers the questions. Sometimes Schoology jumps in, but not very often, because it's not their group. It's our group as educators. So there's a professional development group, there's the Schoology educators group, and then there are content-specific groups within Schoology too, where people just help each other out, and that's the support piece that's great. That's where I learn best. That's my professional learning community and my professional learning network when it comes to Schoology. Other examples are how we're creating and sharing district resources in Schoology. This has come a little bit slower. We have our district curriculum, but our district instructional coaches, there aren't very many of them. So one of the best examples is this OSD K-5 group, where for elementary, we're trying to look at, it links to the teacher librarian group. Have to check that link. But the elementary folks are integrating our non-integrated Wonders, Bridges, and FOSS curriculum. So our science and math and reading coaches are working together to work on integrated units, and then they're placing and housing those units within Schoology, and people are joining that group. That is led at the district level by our instructional coaches, and so people are joining that group as they join professional developments about that integration. This teacher librarian group is led by the teacher librarians, and the difference is that every member of this group wears a crown. So instead of just having people administrate and decide what materials should go there, the teacher librarians are all equal contributing members to this group, and so everyone here can contribute to the resources and has equal say in what's in and what's out and how it's organized, and can move and function within the group and what resources are there. A lot of times in the group you'll have one administrator, one person wearing the crown, and everyone else receives but doesn't necessarily have the freedom to add and subtract resources. And the last group, this middle school math group, is fairly new, and it's also run by one of our instructional coaches. And the difference here, again, there are 19 members of this group. 2 people have the authority to manage the resources so that they're district approved, and the rest of the group receives the curriculum or the resources, but they can't necessarily add to the resources. So there are different ways to structure those groups. So professionally and for professional development, we find that modeling the strategies within Schoology that we want our teachers to use, so they start to experiment, and then those strategies build into something that we never knew they would, using the groups for things like creating common assessments and PLCs and PLNs, and then having our instructional coaches begin to build places to share out district resources. And I think this area right here is where we have the biggest room, or the greatest area opportunity to grow. So what's really working? Again, modeling strategies in meaningful ways, practicing, time to practice and implement and come back, reflect, and share with others. Our end of the year activity this year will be a mini conference where the teachers who are in our digital immersion initiative are going to come back in, they're going to share in a conference style format what their independent study project was, how it relates to the ISTE standards, what lesson or project they redesigned, how that worked, and they're going to reflect in front of a peer group at this mini conference in May, and hopefully we'll have some awesome ideas that then they're sharing again with other people. And last, this was a statement that was made from our superintendent, and I think it's pretty powerful, and it's followed by a statement from one of our teacher librarians, and it just happens to be about Schoology. It's about how technology has the potential, obviously, and Schoology in particular, to personalize and individualize learning. And so I just wanted to play this for you.
We are at a tipping point in education where our students and our parents are expecting customization and individualization in our classrooms to better serve the individual needs of students. And that's going to be done through technology.
I think one of the biggest fears that people have is that technology is taking away from our human interactions, and I would counter that with technology allows a more globalized interaction, and that through programs like Schoology, we're actually able to teach our kids to have online discussions in a safe environment and to teach them online manners and ways to interact with people in a professional world. Because I know that that's a real hang-up for a lot of people, is that we're missing that human interaction. And again, there's ways that we can still interact as humans in a digital world.
Because it went quickly to something else. That was one of our Levy promotional videos, but it spoke very, very highly of how we think about how technology is critical as we move forward, but it's also a place where even students are practicing, just like teachers need that time to practice in a safe space. So that's the information that I have to share with you today. And next, if you didn't get a chance to join into, got to click off of that. We're going to have a chance for questions, but some of you came in a little bit later, and there was a link on the very first slide with a link to the ACPE class. I wanted to have you have a chance to join that. And in there is a survey that we wanted to see if we can pull some results from.
If you go backward, I think it's like 4 tabs to your...
Is it there? Because I'm
Go
going to
back
put my
one.
glasses
Go
back on.
one.
Go back one.
Yep, try that one.
There it is.
Okay.
This is where we hope you'll go when you click on that link.
Yeah, so Brenda, actually the slides that Brenda just presented are in here, but just for full transparency, the links that she showed went specifically to her district, so you would not be able to go and view those. So that's why she put bullet points so you could remember kind of what she talked about. In this example here, this folder, that's where I pulled in some resources from other examples of PD that we've seen. So one of them was a digital storytelling course. That one was a self-paced course that anybody could go into. This was part of a Colorado Digital Storytelling Project. We had a consortium of schools that bought WeVideo, and so we had a self-paced course that anybody could take to help them kind of go through what was WeVideo, but more importantly, what does a project look like when you're doing video with kids and really want a high-quality project. So that one, again, was self-paced. If we go back to the other examples folder, there's also, Brenda mentioned Google certification. My previous district, we were heavily Google. As I mentioned, we rolled out Chromebooks to our 61 schools. We were 54,000 student district, so relatively large for Colorado. So inside of that one, we basically Schoologized all of the Google training materials so that teachers could get credit for also getting that certification. But one of the things that we put in place, and Brenda talked about modeling, was these must-completes. There's a way to do student completion rules inside of the platform, which means you can pace the learning. So you can't move on until you do one thing or another or score a certain amount. So we had actually teachers as learners experience what that was like. And we saw the same thing Brenda did, which was teachers like, oh, how did you do that? I want to try that, yeah. So that's an example of our Google course. So all that stuff is posted in here. And then the other thing that, just go back to one folder for me, Brenda. Yep. If you scroll down just a little. The digital badges, we also are doing micro-credentialing. So there's badges inside of Schoology. So we presented at Learning Forward a couple years ago on how we had done digital badges for professional learning. So I basically just posted all of our resources in here for you if you were curious about how we actually structured that. So one of the nice things about what you can do within the platform is you can make things open like we did here. So obviously Brenda's stuff is logged in by her domain. You can make any group or course publicly available so that anybody can go in and just use it like they would a regular website. We've also actually Schoologized all of Common Sense Media's digital citizenship resources. So anybody who's a Schoology user can grab those and pull them into their own domain and use them as they would. It's Google heavy, it's not Microsoft heavy, because we built it. But so we wanted to make sure we left time for questions. We do have a survey in there. We really just wanted to find out kind of what you were doing for professional learning in your district, kind of what you were hoping to get out of today's session, and then how long, of course, you've been in education. So that was just our little kind of check that we put in. But it was also a way to model that you can also embed things like Google Forms, slides, whatever. Embed codes are one of the coolest things ever you can do inside of Schoology. It's magical. And that being said, questions, clarifying questions for either Brenda or for me? Yes.
When you were starting out, what was the size of your team?
The professional development team, our team, 3. We have myself, I support mostly the high schools, and I have 2 colleagues, one who supports the middle schools and one who supports the elementary. Mm-hmm. So that's why we need these folks. We need these cohort groups and these lead teams because they're the ones that are working with their colleagues at the building level, presenting their ideas and sharing informally and formally what they've learned.
This stipend for the leaders at the building are kind of natural leaders doing it voluntarily?
Well, in year 1, the pilot year, where we piloted Schoology, the incentive was that they had a dedicated card in their classroom, up to 40 hours of paid professional development as well.
Okay.
So that was the incentive for year 1. This year, they had a dedicated cart in their classroom, up to 20 hours of professional development. We modified it a little bit with what was the most essential piece from the first year. But we aren't doing anything other than that. Yeah. And now, next year, we're moving into a true one-to-one with 2 of our middle schools. That's our first go at it.
Was Schoology your first LMS, or did this replace something?
We had Moodle in the district, but it was very lightly used and had, I think at one point it had a place, but wasn't heavily used. And so I wouldn't say that it replaced Moodle because there wasn't much use of Moodle. So it was our first LMS, yeah.
How heavily are they used? You mentioned elementary.
Mm-hmm.
High school versus middle school versus elementary.
Well, at the high school, I actually have those numbers and I didn't pull them up. When I go into a high school classroom, every student is impacted by Schoology because one or more of their teachers is using Schoology. So there's a saturation of students. I mean, it's 100% of our students. It's not 100% of our teachers, obviously. I would say it's probably, I have the numbers, but I didn't pull them up for this. Middle school, pretty much the same at 2 of our middle schools. The 2 other middle schools a little bit lighter, but they haven't been part of our pilot and they haven't been part of a bigger push. At the elementary, we have one of our elementaries that's been part of the Digital Immersion Initiative for 2 years. They're in, and then there are pockets, heavy pockets. And I'd say those are in our 3, 4, 5 grade level bands. It's not that it's not being used in other places. I know there are teachers who are at lower grades using it, but we purchased our license for classrooms from 3 through 12. So I mean, teachers are in the platform, but they're in it for professional development and they're in it for collaboration. They're not in it with their students at this time, and that may change.
So a question for you, how is it licensed? Is it by student, by teacher, by?
It's by student, goes enrollment. So it can either be partial, like in Brenda's case, or it can be full at 1 grade level. Yeah. And then adults are unlimited. So parents, staff, support staff, they don't have limits.
Have you rolled out, and what involvement have you seen in parents getting into the school? Have you guys opened it up for parents yet?
We have it open for parents at our one of our, I won't call it our alternative school. It's our Regional Learning Academy, and we did it because they have the Home Connect and the iConnect students, and so parents are heavily involved. And so we wanted to find out from them how it would work, what it would look like, and we are looking at that and making a decision about opening it up this fall to the rest of the district. We also didn't want to open it up until teachers were comfortable in the system. There was I would say a majority or a mass, at least, a critical mass of people who were using it, so that there was something that parents would see when they got the notification that, hey, You know, you can see your child's work, or you can see your classes, your courses in Schoology. You know, the message went out to students or to parents. So we wanted something to be there first. So giving them a head start was a good idea, we thought. Yes?
Are you doing self-registration for parents, or are you using Skyward? Or other platforms?
We did the Schoology where I wasn't part of how they got notified.
Gotcha.
I just part of the decision, like, okay, this school, you guys are going to do it, and then they worked with one of our programmers.
Gotcha.
And I know the message came out, and it went out through School Messenger, so, but it wasn't very personal in terms of what it said. But basically, I think it was through Skyward.
Okay.
But also, you can use the access codes, or you could.
Okay, yeah,
And so we were looking at, that's part of our process of making the decision.
That's how parents would join a class.
What is the best way? Because once you're in, you can be in through multiple children in the same login. So that's the desired result. One login, multiple children.
If you've got online registration or an SSO for parents, then you can actually use those same credentials. So you don't have to worry about access codes. That's how we did it.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that when we do the implementation this summer.
Yeah, we're still talking about that.
Mercer Island's been a Schoology customer for a long time, and we started with parents asking for access. That was a fail, because it just became too much to keep track of. So we just said, we assume you want an account, and then used a process basically with Skyward, using templates to say, this is your account, right? And then because they're all hooked, we get the kids to pay it. So yeah, it's worked really well. I mean, the parents appreciate it. It might mean that they're a little bit over involved, but it's still, I would rather have that than having to navigate not having access to it. And we did that from the beginning. Even when we were in pilot, we just said some of your classes will be at Schoology, some of them won't. We're moving forward.
Good luck. Yeah. Yes.
You need to buy some policies. I'm sure you have some policies that cover this, or like covered over your technology policy.
We haven't developed any specific policies around the use of Schoology. It just falls. I'm looking at you, Mark, thinking, what would there be? This is our Chief Information Officer in the back. So I'm looking to the back of the room, thinking.
We don't have any specific policy around the use of Schoology or an LMS, but it's an electronic resource like anything else. So that would fall under your electronic resource policy that we use. And then in the state of Washington, the digital citizenship requirement would come into play, especially when you're dealing with online discussions, things like that, where the students are interacting with each other, would be a big piece there.
Kind of curious why the manual sync with the gradebook instead of an automatic sync with the gradebook. Seems to me that would cause confusion between a parent checking Skyward parent access and checking this.
And I think it was to avoid that confusion for teachers. We had the conversation with the teachers during the pilot, and when it's automatic, it's instant. It's not nightly, like the nightly sync with Skyward. So if I'm a teacher in a standard classroom, not one-to-one, I'm collecting a stack of papers, I decide when I want to tell the class what their grades are. If I'm entering grades online, doing online grading, the grade for the first student, second student, third student, then I want to take the weekend or 3 more days or something happens, only part of this, I don't choose when that set of grades goes to students, because the minute I'm done doing an online grade, it instantly is synced to Skyward. So it's just a sync button at the top of the grade book, and I don't think I can show you that without showing student grades, because in my classes, I don't have that sync button. This is not a Skyward synced grade. These are not real student grades. But it will this is where they push. So they just sync all changes to Skyward, or they could go to their sync log and sync individual, access denied. They could sync individual assignments to Schoology, but we wanted it to be teacher choice. So it's just a matter of when I'm ready to sync grades, I click here. So
another important point there, because most of all this is that what we recommend actually is that you hide your overall grade So that if
Right.
the parent wants to see what's the average for the grade, that always lives in your SIS. That's the official record. This is just a record of which assignments have been graded here. So if you hide this overall grade column, the parents see what the kid got on something, but they know to check somewhere else for the overall.
So in the grade setup, as part of our training, and that's been a big part of our training, this is not correct because this is not syncing to Skyward. But in our training, we emphasize that people, now make that larger, that they hide their overall grade. We don't want parents seeing a grade in Schoology because it's like a partial grade. Not all work is done in Schoology or submitted in Schoology. Not all teachers are using the Schoology gradebook as their one and only gradebook. So I think of the Schoology gradebook as a subset of their overall grade, and they may have a C and a B minus in two different places. So we don't want parents to look to Schoology for a grade. So this is in our training documents. It's heavy. We can't stress it enough. If you don't want parents to look at grades, then you need to hide the overall grade and grading period grades in Schoology so that they are looking at family access in Skyward or student access in Skyward to see their grades. No one likes to see things that don't line up. And so that's the way we get around that in those visibility settings for gradebook setup. But this is not a course that's linked to Skyward's adult learning, so it's my practice class.
So we have time for about one more question, if there are any. Otherwise, I think we can thank Brenda and
Kelly.
Thank you. Kelly
And
for
Andrew.
the presentation. Yeah, and support. Right. And thank you very much for attending. And the next session starts at 3. So if you're
Okay.
So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. A lot of tabs. Close all the tabs. Close all the tabs.
Yeah. Yeah, we went around.
Thank you.